For this project, I'm going to use different types of line to create textures for all my animals. That means I have to have 3 different textures, and I also have to have value. So we are going to start by creating a value scale for the different types of line. Because hatching and cross hatching are a combination of short or long stroke, I'm not going to include those in this demonstration. Now we're going to measure out for our value scale 1-inch boxes for each type and for each value. So I'm going to measure all the way down from 0 to the 4 and make a little tick mark at each inch to show where my 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are. Now I need to do this on the other side of the paper, except I did not start my ruler at the edge of the paper. I started my ruler at the top of the spiral. So I'm going to kind of guesstimate a little bit to see where they are, make sure my ruler lines up before I commit. So it's helpful for me if I just line my ruler up with the edge of my spiral, make sure it's nice and flat. There we go, I'm flush with my spiral. Now I know that my 1 is actually my 0 for this, so I'm going to measure down to the 5. There's my 1, is where I'm starting at, so I'll start here as my 1, then 2, 3, 4 below. So it will look like 5 inches, but I know I'm actually measuring 4 across. The long lines are your inch marks, so make sure that you're marking by the long line. And I just realized I need 5 values, so I added an extra inch. So it should be 4 inches down and 5 inches across. I have a 1-inch margin. I'm going to make sure that 1, the long line, lines up with the edge of my box, and I'm going to measure to the 6 this time, so that this is 5 inches long. So my 1 is technically my 0 for this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. Same thing here, line up my 1. Now I'm going to measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. Stop at the long line for a whole inch. Alright, down here we're going to create the edge of our box, make sure everything is 1 inch apart, which you can see they're not quite, but close enough. Alright, now I have the end of my boundary box, fix these little spots right here, and this time I need to have 1 inch by 1 inch squares, so I'm going to make little tick marks and actually measure so that I have 1 inch by 1 inch squares. Line my 0 up with the edge of the box, and now I'm going to make a mark on the long 1 inch markings. The camera was above my art, not my face, so my measurements are just a little bit off. Make that adjustment. So now I know these are all exactly 1 inch. I don't have to do this on the top or the bottom part, just the 3 in the middle. Line my ruler up. Now I know that that first one is a little bit off. So I'm going to line it up with the last 2 marks that I made and draw my line all the way across. So now I should have 1 inch by 1 inch squares. I have 4 rows and 5 columns. Once this is done, I rotate the paper and it's time to label. So this top one, this is going to be my short stroke. Next, C stroke, also called scrumbling. Scrumbling. Next is stippling. These are little dots. And last will be long stroke. So remember, hatching and cross hatching is something that you can do with your short stroke or the long stroke. It's just a way of applying the lines. So go ahead and label this now. Pause the video. I'm going to make a little example for each one so I know what type of stroke these are. Now, label the top section. The first column is your lightest, the last column is your darkest. We're creating a value scale. For a light value, you're going to add very few strokes and keep them fairly far apart. And as you work from lightest to darkest, you'll add more pen strokes and keep them closer together to get a darker value. You can also adjust the line weight, the thickness or the thinness of the line itself. So a heavier line is going to appear darker versus a lighter line will appear lighter. Short stroke you can apply as if it were fur or grass. You could also apply it with a hatching style. So here I'm hatching. They're neat and orderly, not overlapping very much. Now with the darkest one, I need to get it even darker than this 4th level. So my 5th level is my darkest. I'm going to keep all my lines really close together. They can overlap, they can touch. I'm filling this in as if it were fur or grass or some other similar texture. So now that this is done, I'm going to continue on to the rest of my different pencil strokes or pen strokes. So I'm going to start with scrumbling. Same thing, the closer together they are, the more frequent, the darker it will appear from far away. So my darkest one, I'm just going to scrumble and scrumble and scrumble and scrumble some more. Now when I get to stippling, this is dots. You don't want to go too fast and you want to keep the pen upright. So you're just making dots, round dots. If you go too fast or dot from the side, you're going to end up with tiny little pen strokes that we don't want. We want circles. We don't want lines. So this took forever. I sped this up to 16 times the normal speed. Layer and layer and layer and dot and dot and dot. So the darkest will take you the longest to fill up. Now we're just about done. Make sure that you fill in the whole space. Stretch your hands, stretch your fingers, take breaks as you need it. Long stroke. So this is like long fur or hair or long grass. Same as the short stroke. Generally you want to go all the same direction or you'll be cross hatching. Cross hatching you can do with long strokes or short strokes. All done.